As the warning sign says, all work should be carried out by a qualified electrician, and there is high voltage inside, so it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So make sure you get somebody who knows what they're doing and is a qualified electrician to do any work inside the covers of that. Okay, this is a correctly working laser. Testing, your LED light should come on. Correct. Next test. The LED should come on down inside the power supply for the laser when you push the button. Okay. If the machine isn't actually outputting laser from there, it can be to do with the lockout switches, which are usually on the bonnet or on the top of the lid, which has to be closed, and the water has to be flowing. You can have faults in there, and that will stop that working, even though it's saying it's working. The next thing you can get is arcing or something up in here for it to stop working, or your tube can be buggered itself. Now, if the tube over time has lost power and you had to keep increasing power to make it work, and then it's got, when you go over say 3.5 power or 60% of that, it actually doesn't work as good as if it got the power. The more than likely the CO2 is depleted in the tube, and instead of your nice big arc like this, you will have nothing, because the CO2 is carrying that power. So your voltage is going in on the red there. As you can see, it's fully sealed to try to keep it from sparking, but it can be arcing out there, and if it's arcing, there can be a couple of reasons. The tube could be buggered, which often you can indicate by looking for cracks. You go along the length, make sure there's no cracks in the tube. If there's a crack in the tube, the gas could have leaked out, and that will cause it to have too high resistance, and the spark has to go somewhere, so it will try to jump out around this area, or maybe even go into the water. By the sounds of it, you can even get into the water. So to make sure that it's only the tube that's playing up, the next thing you do, you've got to power out there, which is negative. So you're basically just checking between that negative terminal and the chassis of the machine. That should be a continuity, so there should be a circuit between that negative and the machine. Before you start all this, if you're going to get this down this end, make sure you put a wire onto your chassis there somewhere and touch it onto the red wire here. The reason being, you can discharging the tube. Now you can discharge, not the tube, you're discharging the machine. Or you can come right back into here and disconnect it there and discharge it there. But that's with the machine turned off, so you're just making sure there's no residual current on that high voltage side. So once you've done that, then once you ascertain whether it's the tube is cracked, lost its power, or is just worn out, then you have to look at replacing the tube. So very difficult to find the crack sometimes, but you may see arcing inside the tube or that sort of stuff, and that would sort of give you an indication that the tube has shit itself. Okay, we'll move on, and next thing I'll just show you how to put your wires back on, etc. So when you take the tube out, you've got your screws there. When you assemble it, don't over tighten your screws so you don't want to crack the tube. When you reassemble it also, be a bit careful with your plastic hoses. Put them on gently. Don't break your bloody plastic, your glass away, because if this glass, it will break. Put your tube on gently, then put your cable ties back onto it. So that's your water in, it's mounted back in position, and then all you have to do is reseal this. And I'll just show you a quick way how to reseal this, which seems to work quite well. You are troubleshooting here, so 50 watt power supply out of the machine. Make sure these plugs, that and that, are both in firmly. Make sure all your wires are in all the connections and the screws are all nice and tight. Okay, basically this is all required to put in the new tube, basically. So you can see we have a spike coming out of there on either end. This is the anode end, cold end, which goes to positive, and that's the negative. Okay, we also have our wire, which is going in there. This is PTT tape, so it's just water thread tape. This is the bit that goes over the top eventually, and this is the sealant that goes on that. So the best way to do this is probably just run those down, wind those up a little bit, wind the two of them together. So we split it in half, we pulled it back, then I'm going to put that in there a little bit like that. The reason now we're going to bring that across, make sure it's on the metal arcing part. We're going to go around. We can go around a couple of times, above and below. And bring that back around and wrap it back around here again. That one, and wrap this one back around. That one goes back around that way. Just tight, just twitch it all together. So the whole thing is like in a nice big bundle. So now we're going to come out of there. So to bulk this up, we just use our thread tape. So the wire's coming down the side, so we're just using our thread tape to bulk it up, as well as insulating. Bulk it up, bulk it up. Bring it back around, just so you reckon it's got a little bit of bulk on it. And over top of that, we're going to put this. It's not too tight, that's a little bit tight. So we'll then get our liquid tape or silicone or something like that, fill that up inside here. We push that onto there. That's probably a little bit too tight. And then while it's drying, we use a bit of our masking tape over the top to hold that down. So the principle is like that. Just be careful of all these tubes and that. So yeah, to make sure that it's big enough to go, that tube might not be the right size, a bit bigger tube could have been better, but we have all silicone inside, held down there, and leave that on there till it dries. Once it dries, you pull it off, and then you come back and you'll have it look at, and then you've got your screw, same both ends, screw it in, your hose goes onto here, hose on the other end, cable tie to make sure it can't come off, even though it's got a knurled bit on there. And basically that's all there is involved in changing your tube around. So your electrician will do all that, you know, as per the warning at the front of the video. After we replaced our tube, I'm just going to quickly run through how to basically do a basic check on your lot to make sure everything's still lined up. So the easiest way to do this is to get your masking tape, put your masking tape on over the centre there. Now the centre of here is going to be that. So you have it right back to the back of the machine, set our power at 10%, and just do a very small test. And you may not see it, but there's a little dot here now, that dot there. Now the next thing, it's got to travel the whole distance of this surface from there to there and be in the same position. So now we are basically going to check that we just testified about 10% power to make sure that dot lines up. On mine, that's now up and to the left a little bit. I have to bring it down to the right, and each one of the mirrors has this similar system. It's got three adjustments, and these are spring loads to spring load the mirror, and these to adjust the mirror. So that one's up and to the left, so this other mirror in behind here, which is directing it that way, has to move it down and across to the right. So that's by moving the ones in the right, and it's only a very small distance, we're not moving it very far. Then we move, once we've got that one right, we take it back to the centre, around about halfway. Now we're doing the same thing on this mirror. So we are checking that mirror, so we're putting a bit of tape over that mirror there, and we test fire it, and then we move it to the far end. Now when it's up that end, same thing, we are now going to test it and see. So it's across to the left, it's about the right height, so that's pretty good. So that basically, once you've got those dots on top of each other, you're pretty well right. Now the next easiest thing to test is where it's going to fire to. So if you just get a bit of material, a bit of scrap, and say work out set your height of your machine so your focal length should be correct, because we're going to use this edge here to work out the height. So, oops. So, okay. So we've set our focal length. We now will give it a test, and you can see where the little dot is on there on the piece of wood. Just hold the piece of well, I moved it. Hold the piece of wood down. Then you use a straight edge. You put the edge corner on the dot, and it should be around about the middle of your tube here. And you check it in that direction, and you check it in the other direction, the X, the Y, and the Y direction. And that should be get quickly where your focus and everything should be after you do your swap your tube around to make sure it's all set again. Okay.